Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ravenstar's Witching Hour. I'm your host and head witch, Miss Solaris BlueRaven at the helm this evening. I want to give a shout out to everybody at Revolution Radio, staff, producers, listeners, chat room, and thank everybody for tuning in tonight. And we are 100% listener supported, so if you like what you're hearing, please click on the donate button. We appreciate your support and thank you for any contribution you can make to this excellent station. And I trust everybody had a safe 4th of July here in America. So we'll just go into our happy place, right, as we process all the stuff that's happening in this world right now. And Revolution Radio is hosting a summer auction for 2014, so go ahead and access that page and check everything out. I think it ends on Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. So do check that out. It'll be fun. And let's see what else I have here. Any special news? We all know Mike's celebrating his birthday in Columbia, Kentucky, so make sure you contact Kat Jenkins for any information if you want to celebrate Mike Ringley's birthday coming up this month, too. And you are listening to Studio A. I do want to say a special thank you to Douglas Dietrich. He's always very kind, and I appreciate his positive feedback with me. So thank you very much, and he has a wonderful show as well prior to mine. And my special guest tonight is Reverend Michael JS Carter. And Reverend Michael JS Carter is originally from Baltimore, Maryland. He moved to New York City in 1980 and has lived there for 25 years working as a professional actor before moving to Asheville with his family. Michael is an ordained Interfaith minister and received his B.A. degree in letters from the College of New Rochelle, where he graduated. He received his Masters in Divinity Degree from Union Theo-logical Seminary in New York City, class of 2000. Reverend Carter has written articles on UFOs and religion for such publications as UFO Magazine, Alien Encounters, the MUFON UFO Journal, Contact Forum, the Space Newsletter Support Program for Abductees Contact Encounters, and a UFO support group in New York City. He has spoken at UFO conferences such as the Second Philadelphia Need to Know Conference, the annual Long Island UFO Conference with Budd Hopkins, as well as appearing on radio and TV appearances across the nation. Reverend Carter has also appeared on Japanese television discussing the Bible and UFOs. A longtime UFO experiencer, he lectures extensively on the topic of religion and UFOs. He has appeared on the Sci-Fi Channel's Steven Spielberg's production of Abduction Diaries, The Real 4400, and is a frequent guest on the History Channel's production of Ancient Aliens. His book, Alien Scriptures, Extraterrestrials in the Holy Bible, is available for purchase on Amazon.com, and his website is michaeljscarter.com. And also, we have some information about Michael appearing at the Edgar Cayce Foundation, and there's a link for that posted in the chat for everybody. So please welcome Reverend Michael to the show this evening. And Michael, how you doing?
Hey, Solaris. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure.
Great 4th of July.
Thank you. And likewise, it's nice to hear your voice, and it's nice to have you on board here tonight. I know it's late, so thank you for staying up with us.
It's always a pleasure.
And indulging us this late night as well.
Oh,
yeah, so everybody's probably familiar with you, but I would like to go through a lot of your book information and actually talk about alien scriptures and extraterrestrials in the Holy Bible and how you got involved in writing this book.
Wow. Great question. Solaris, and you and I have talked about this before. I wasn't a Trekkie. I'm not even to this day, I'm not a big Star Wars person or anything like that. And I can recall a time when I didn't believe any of the stuff that I'm writing. I remember someone asking me when I was younger in Baltimore, Maryland, if I believed in life on other planets and UFOs. And I said no. And they looked at me as if they were astonished. And they said, why not? And my answer was, because it's not in the Bible. So what a difference 50 years makes. Mm-hmm. But I started getting into the topic because of my own contact experiences, which I talk about in the book. And it just led me to look at religion and spirituality and how this contact affected people who had these contacts, affected people spiritually. Mm-hmm. I'm not a nuts and bolts type person. I know a lot of my friends and a lot of people in the community, UFO community, they're really intrigued about propulsion systems and back engineering, the nuts and bolts type of thing, which I love, but that's not how my head works. And probably because I'm a clergy person, but I'm more interested in any transformational events or consciousness-raising events that happen as a result of people having contact with off-world intelligences. And so for me, it's kind of a double whammy. I mean, I'm a clergy person. I serve a church. a Unitarian Universalist church, but I serve a church. But I'm also an experiencer. I'm also a contactee. So I have some different insights, perhaps, than maybe someone who has not had these experiences.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I like the idea that it's a universal church, which means it's non-denominational, right?
Yes, yes. Well, we have, it's a Unitarian Universalist church. We have atheists in our congregation. We have Christians. We have people who don't know and don't care. We have Wiccans. We have a conglomeration of faith traditions, which is a challenge every Sunday to try and reach out. But I think that's the beauty of it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. You're bridging all of these different belief systems into one on a higher level. And I believe in the spirituality aspect of it anyway. So, we go through these programs, what I call religion, and then we take a step out of it and start moving on to higher levels of consciousness based on spirituality. I love what you're doing, Michael. I really appreciate the work you do here on this world, and the fact that you're opening the door to bridge the communication with off-world species and what we are, because honestly, we are descendants of that, whether people want to acknowledge it or not.
I agree wholeheartedly, and there's evidence of this in our sacred scriptures, and even without that, I mean, it's just all these things point to Rome, as it were, and so we have to grow up and to join a galactic kind of consciousness, and I think we can do that. I know you and I have talked. It's hard because we just fight so much on this planet. It's so much political strife and what have you, and that's part of politics. I understand that, but we just focus so much on differences, which we are. Differences are powerful, and we need to acknowledge them, but not so much where it's the us and them kind of mentality. It will destroy us if we keep at it.
I so agree. Well, I think it's all about control and manipulation, too. And if we could just kind of, move that out of the space, because I think that's a huge part of it. It's all about trying to manipulate everybody else's concept of what we call reality. We have role models, which I consider you to be a role model, on a spiritual level. And of course, you have these corporations that are based on corruption. So it's almost like we're moving uphill, and we're trying to, to walk uphill opposing all of this, corruption really is what it is. But I do want to see that change, and hopefully it will at some point.
Well, I think your show is part of that change. What I have to say, and what everybody's doing, even the mundane, because, sometimes it does feel like we're walking in quicksand, but when paradigms change, it takes a lot of effort. And people who are going to hold on to old ways out of fear, because it's all about fear and love and what choices we make, they're going to hold on as long as they can, because it's scary. Mm-hmm. It's scary for those of us who want change. So I see a new world evolving. I do see a new consciousness, but I do see those who were invested in the old ways, as it were, they're going to hold on tight. Mm-hmm. It's scary. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing I see, with all these different religions across the board on the planet. There's too much judgment. There's too much for this God's, versus that God. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And why people can't just seem to get along on a higher level of consciousness, regardless of what they're doing on their paths, I don't understand that concept. And maybe you do. But do you have any take on that?
I just feel that a lot of times it's harder to unlearn things than it is to learn something new. Mm-hmm. We're talking about thousands of years of evolution. And, religion had served a purpose at one time. And I still think it can serve a purpose, but it's just been so misdirected and misguided, because a lot of religions, I think of Dr. King, who was a religious man. His religious beliefs changed this country. Gandhi brought down the British Empire, but it changed the nation. The way he lived out his Hinduism. So I don't want to paint religion with a bad brush, but I do know that when people are want to keep a status quo and they want to keep power, one of the best ways to do it, of course, is economically and militarily, but one of the best ways to do it is through religion. So I say all that to say that, it's hard to unlearn things when things are uncertain now on the planet. So a lot of people will go back to what's tried and true. And what will that mean? It means that they go back to their religion, because their religion makes things simpler. This is bad, this is good. But you and I both know that there's a lot of gray area in life. If life was that simple, it sure would be much easier, but it's not. So I try to remember that fear, because we all experience it in one way or another, and it just keeps a little more compassionate mindset for me, because I can be quick to judge and go, don't you guys get it? What is it with you guys? But for me, that's my ego, which is I'm doing the same thing they're doing it, but I'm becoming intolerant of intolerance. So it's a journey. It's a journey.
Yes, but, it is. Yeah.
And I hear you. It's hard to. It's almost mind-boggling that a lot of times people don't see that is this. It's just fear. But here we are on planet Earth for however long we're going to be here. So we muddle through as best we can.
Right. Well, it's interesting. I do see all these paradigms collapsing. I mean, I see all the alternate realities and everything just kind of falling down because it's not working anymore, of course, and It's all corrupted, just like a corrupted file in a computer. So, it's all based on programming, too, of course. Belief systems can be based on that. So, to me, I think, now, correct me if I'm wrong with your personal experience, but your encounters seem to have triggered you to a higher level of consciousness, or were you already there?
You know what? I was a mess, Solaris. I was living... I was a party guy, okay, before these things. I was an actor in New York, and that's a profession where it's I, me, and I'm not knocking that, but it's really focused on the self, because you're trying to find jobs, whether it's commercials, whether it's film, movie, that kind of thing. And it did accelerate my consciousnness, and it made me go from my head to my heart. I do live my life less fearfully, but I had to get through the trauma of, having my reality shattered. But yeah, for me personally, I wouldn't change it for anything in the world. And it did open up my consciousness. It made me think about who I am on a deeper level. What is it I believe? What do I want to do with my life? How do I want to live my life? It opened me up to not being afraid of difference, even though I wasn't so much as far as different racial or ethnic groups or what have you, but just trying to have more compassion for those who think differently from me. But I had to work at it. I mean, we're talking therapy I was in for other things growing up in the family I grew up in. We're talking about taking classes. We're talking about studying. So it wasn't like they touched me like E.T. does in a movie and all of a sudden I was transformed, but they made my consciousness shift so that I would want to do these things.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And how did you correlate the encounter you had as an experiencer with patterns in the Bible based on extraterrestrials or some kind of an off-world intelligence?
Oh, wow. This is great question. What I did was, oh God, I was in the closet about my own personal experiences. And until really the last few years. But, I just read everything I could on, star people, everything I could. With the late John Mack's books, I had the late Budd Hopkins regressed me. I met Zachariah Stitchin. I just read everything I could, but especially that with a religious bent. And I ran across a book by my friend and colleague, Dr. Barry Downing. He is a retired Presbyterian minister. As a matter of fact, I didn't see him. I was in New York Monday, as you know, shooting Ancient Aliens season 7, and we were supposed to get together, but it just didn't work. But he had written a book called the Bible and Flying Saucers, and it was like heaven on earth, because I said, my God, here is a clergy person who is positing what I'm going through. Like, again, the only differences are that I've had the experiences and Barry hasn't. And so then I started finding other ministers. A Reverend Virginia Brasington. She's deceased. Right here in Asheville, North Carolina. She lived here and wrote a book back in the 60s called UFOs and Flying Saucers in the Bible. A guy by the name of Morris K. Jessup. He was not a clergy person, but he had written a book on this subject. Dr. Ted Peters, he's a Lutheran minister. We don't agree on a lot of things, but here are clergy people coming out and saying, Ted Peters is kind of waffles back and forth, but that off-world intelligences exist. Not only do they exist, but most probably they had contact with our ancestors and may have been the catalyst for at least, not all religion, but at least the three major religions or people of the book: Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. Now, we know that our Native American brothers and sisters talk about the star people. I have Cherokee ancestry. We say we come from the Pleiades. There are a lot of nations out there that talk about the star people. So this cosmology is pretty universal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it certainly is. And of course, your experiences and my perception of experience with a lot of these things is that they are positive versus some kind of a malicious type of entity with an agenda.
Yeah, how can I say? My experiences, I think, are positive. I don't say I don't think, I know. I do know that there are people who have not had positive experiences, and there are many reasons for that. And I don't pretend to know any of them, but they're real. And so I want to put that out there because in my experience, just like there are more benevolent human beings versus benevolent, there are also many benevolent and malevolent off-world intelligences. So they don't all want to come and sing Kumbaya with us, just like most people don't. But I don't want us to paint them with a broad brush and saying they're all good or they're all bad. We don't do well with polarity in this culture. It's either good or bad, black or white, right or wrong. And I wish it were that way. It would make my life and probably others' lives much more easier. But there's a lot of gray area. And so we need to take that into consideration.
I agree with you. Yeah. Well, a lot of different species. And you're right. It's a busy highway in the universe. A lot of different types of races out there. And of course, we don't pay attention to that. Some people don't anyway, but a lot of us do tune into the higher frequency about it. But yeah. And also tell us a little bit about your ancient aliens. I just wanted to kind of do a recap on that.
Yeah. Well, they're starting their 7th season. And I've been fortunate enough to be, on several of their shows. And I was in New York on Monday, and we shot 4 episodes, which I believe will be airing in the fall. And by that, I mean maybe October, November. We covered, again, a wide variety of topics. I will be on there. And again, Dr. Downing will be on there. We talked about the Watchers and the story of Noah's Ark. Mm-hmm. We talked about the spiritual and mystical aspects of the Catholic ritual of transubstantiation. We talked about Enoch and the book of Enoch. And we talked about we talked about the spiritual meaning of caves in Scripture. And by that, I mean, when people have to, a lot of adepts, whether they're Buddhist or Christian or contemplatives, they go in, they live in a cave, mm-hmm. especially in the early part of the birth of these religions. And so we talked about what that means symbolically and literally, mm-hmm. To get away from all the noise, whether it's the noise inside of us or the noise around us, to get that kind of solitude. So those were the topics. We shot 4 episodes. I mean, we started at 9:30 in the morning. I was done by 5 minutes to 12.
Wow.
Yeah, we really went through it pretty quickly, and I love it. This is their 7th season. They seem not to be running out of material, and you know, a lot of people watch that show.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I'm glad you're involved in that. That's wonderful. Really, really happy about that. Yeah. And you know, it's interesting when you talk about the caves in Scripture. You know, to me, it's the rite of passage or the initiate that goes into the caves. They used to have initiations in ancient times, you know, in caves.
Oh, definitely. And that's exactly what we were talking about. Mm-hmm. You know, Muhammad, when Gabriel comes to visit Muhammad and says, Ikra, Ikra, you know, recite. Muhammad is meditating in a cave. Elijah, who lived around the 9th century BCE, the Hebrew prophet, he lived in a cave. Jesus has risen. If you believe the cosmology of an interpretation of that story, he comes out of a tomb, which was a cave. Lazarus rises out of a tomb, which is a cave. So on and on and on we go. But again, as you said, it is about the initiate, about going inside. Right. We have Plato's allegory of the cave.
Exactly. And don't you think, well, I'm asking you this way, insofar as the Bible goes, with a lot of different, the way they express information, do you think it's based more on a code insofar as, how do I describe it? It's not really actually happened that way, but it's more of a pattern insofar as a level of consciousness where it's all representation of something else?
Oh, and your psychic talents just kicked in because we did talk about the Bible code.
Okay. All right. So something along those lines. Yeah.
Yeah, you picked up on that. I forgot about that. Thank you.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Oh, you know, how can I say? You know, one can look at the Bible or any book, but we're in Western culture. Let's talk about that. There are many ways you can interpret something because it's all about interpretation. For instance, you can have more conservative or evangelical brothers and sisters will look at it literally. This literally happened, okay? Then you have more, you know, we'll call them more liberal, progressive, and I'm not making one value judgment over the other, who will look at it as allegory. And then you have metaphysicians who will read the same verse and say, well, there's a metaphysical meaning behind some of these verses. And they all work. They all work. Mm-hmm. What I do is I try to bridge the gap by saying it's not so much allegory, but these things really happened. But people like myself and Barry Downing, we try to say how they happen. So yeah, they're codes in the sense of, you know, Jesus talked about speaking in parables. And sometimes he said, I speak in parables to keep those who don't understand from understanding. Mm-hmm. But I feel that, you know, if you open your heart, which you do, and we all at least try to do, you go for what rings true inside of you, and then you get out of your head. Because all these arguments are about intellectual treatises on what this and that means. And there's a place for that. I love the life of the mind. I really do. But basically, it's, you know, whether we're talking ETs or whatever we're talking, at the end of the day, it's how you live your life.
Yep. I agree. Yeah, it's about love. I mean, bottom line.
Yes.
I mean,
pure and simple.
Yeah, it's a real simple equation, although people don't seem to get it, or maybe there's something that's blocking them from, you know, having some kind of unconditional love for their fellow man. But that seems like there's a lot of strife these days. So I'd like to see everybody transcend, you know, and start moving to higher levels. We certainly need it. I mean, I think we're in such a critical space right now here on this planet that we desperately need to shift and turn this around. And we're not going to do it by bickering. I mean, with different types of belief systems. That's just not going to happen. I mean, it's not going to move anything.
Yeah, it's both and. You know, it's the best of times and worst of times. Mm-hmm. I have the audacity to believe that we can get better. But you know, the human ego is a very, very powerful thing. And there's the fear factor, which I brought up several times in the past 30 minutes. But, it's the fear, but it's also ego. You see, most people, and I'm included in this, so I don't want to come off like I'm this, freaking avatar or what have you. No, I struggle, and you and I know about some of my own personal things. But it's a lot of us, it's the need to be right. Human beings, I'm 57 years old. I'll be 57 Wednesday. And these last few years, I'm just getting it. Michael, did you come here to be right, or did you come here to be at peace? Mm-hmm. And man, I wanted to be right. But as I get older, it doesn't matter that much anymore about being right. I want to live my life. But it's the human ego that is so powerful. And psychologists talk about it. Course in Miracles talks about it, and trying to transcend that, because even in trying to be a being of light or of love, the ego is there because it's always going to be, why are you doing this? Are you doing it for image? Are you saying you're better than other people? Is any of this in there? Are you intolerant of intolerance? And because a lot of that too can come from ego. And the more sophisticated we are in our spirituality, the more sophisticated the ego is.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's really something to keep an eye on.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Well, to me, it's about surrendering to your higher self and letting go of the ego. And once the ego dissolves, the higher self, oversoul, superconscious is a knowing. I mean, it's not even about debate. It's just it's a laser beam knowing. But it's usually, in my personal experience, it's been based on love and not on squabbling. But I do want to wish you a happy birthday coming up.
Why, thank you, my dear. Yeah. 57 summers on planet Earth.
You don't look like a day over 39.
Oh, you say all the right things. I thank you.
It's true. You look great. Well, that's wonderful. I hope you do something special for your birthday.
I don't know what I'm going to do. I have my daughter that evening, so she wants to go see the Planet of the Apes or something. So I may do that with her. Usually I do something, Solaris. I may buy myself a nice meal. Of course, I'll spend some time with my family. Or, I try to buy myself something, even if it's a nice shirt or something, because I love me, and I'll do something for me.
Mm-hmm. That's very important.
I just don't know what that's going to be yet.
Yeah, I don't think people. I don't want to sound vain, but it's really about loving yourself too, and respecting the temple you reside in, and it's our suit, but it's our temple too. So
yes, I'll do. I may buy a book. I may do all of the above. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. Cool. That's good. So what is your take on demons being aliens, or do you think there's a correlation between demons in the Bible versus an alien?
Wow. Boy, you got some good questions today. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think they're both in. Now, and I'll tell you why. And I'm not talking about a moral relativism here. And you're picking up on your psychic thing is on tonight. We talked about this on Ancient Aliens. I don't want to give away the whole show.
Okay.
But we talked about the book of Enoch, and we talked about the book of Genesis. And they say that, these angels left heaven, fallen angels, if you want to call them that, and they made love to earth women, and they created these hybrids. For those of you who are listening, Genesis 6 goes into it, verses 1 through 4, but pick up the book of Enoch if you haven't already. Now, to answer your question, Enoch says that they taught human beings astronomy, astrology, divination, how to work with jewelry, cosmetics and dyes, offensive and defensive weapons. Okay. Now, the big deal is, I guess there was some universal law at the time that they were not supposed to mate with earthlings. Now, obviously they did it the old-fashioned way because they had kids. But, okay, they broke that law, and there was a harsh punishment to pay for that law, according to the text. But I'm glad that we know about astronomy. I'm glad we know about astrology. I'm glad we know. So people called them demons. And I'm saying, were they really demons? Or was it that, like now, our ancestors did not have the spiritual maturity to deal with the technology that they were given?
I agree. I think
Okay,
that's it.
I'm just asking the question.
Well, that's what I see. I mean, honestly, yeah.
Well, they did. I'm not saying there are no demonic, or that's a hard word. I'm not saying that there are no off-world intelligences that mean us harm. Not saying that, because I'm sure there are. But the technology they gave them, they taught them how to make weapons. Maybe those weapons would be to hunt or for self-defense. But you see all the war and bloodshed in the Bible. We've used it for other means. Well, right now, we get technology, man. It's back engineered. You and I know that. What do? We make drones.
Yeah,
we make laser missiles.
Yeah.
We make warfare. But because we have all this technology, but we don't have the spirituality to deal with it. So instead of using it to develop energy or these kinds of things, we use it to make war. So even back then in the day, they got all that knowledge, and they went around and we'll take over and we'll kill and we'll rape and pillage. So we're just not there yet.
And that's concerning, because it's been a long time and we're still not there yet. They're still controlling and manipulating and misusing technology. But I believe you'd probably resonate with the fact that spirituality has to be balanced with technology. You cannot have one thing. You cannot just be technological without spiritual evolution. Otherwise, it goes into this pattern we're seeing.
Yeah. I would just phrase it the other way around. You can't have technology without spirituality, because if you do, you'll be on the brink where we are. That we can really destroy ourselves. So, but again, I don't see all the darkness that a lot of people see, and because I see people even every day going out here. I see my neighbors, not all, but many people. They're trying to live life the best they can. They're trying to practice what they preach. It's not going to make the New York Times. It's not going to be on CNN, but it's out there.
Yes, it is. I was just muted for a second there. And you know what's really interesting? I don't see it as the people that are really the problem right now. Yeah, they may not be informed 100%. It's more about the people in the illusion of power that are controlling and manipulating, that are causing these problems, that are setting up this whole game board of destruction. That's what I see. I mean, it's basically those are the people that the message needs to get across to, not the regular people on the world or in the world, because I've encountered nice people as well, like you, and they're good. They're just trying to live their lives and have decent livings and this and that. But the biggest thing is to make an impact on the illusion of those who think they're in power. Because I say it's an illusion because really they're really not in power and they're not in control, yet they think they are.
No, I think you make a good point. Yeah, I concur. Yeah. And these leaders are not being responsible. At least many of them are. I won't say all. And so, and they have a lot of responsibility, because they have the responsibility of other people's lives. But you're right. And we saw that, and we see it in ancient times as well. With the Hebrew prophets talking about justice, Amos and Jeremiah and Ezekiel, we see it in Moses going to the Pharaoh and saying, "Hey, man, come on, this politics. You got to free us. What are you doing?" And so it's I see that, and so it's disconcerting at best. I do think, for instance, though, give you an example. This is just my opinion. If it wasn't for the change in consciousness of our nation, we would have had boots on the ground in Syria and the Ukraine by now. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. I'm tired of war. I'm tired of seeing us send troops into these places. But I really think that the reason we don't have troops in these places is because the powers that be are like, the American people, they're not going to stand for it. We got to come up with a real good one to send men and women over there to die. Now, that may change, but I think that has brought us a respite. We looked at Vietnam. The American people stopped that war. They stopped that war. That's powerful. Now, just like people learn lessons, politicians learn lessons too. And they said, well, we know what we won't do. One of the things we'll do is we won't put on the evening news the body bags coming back. We want all the flag draped coffins. We won't do that anymore because that will stem the tide. That'll sway public opinion. We'll have people embedded, but we won't give them but so much information. I mean, it's like a chess game. But people are saying this whole thing with Monsanto and food. People are awakening now to what's going on with chemtrails. I mean, human evolution is slow. It's not going to happen like that. And I'm not saying you're implying that, but people are more aware now of there's something not right, and I need to be able to stand up for it. That's my take on it.
No, I agree with you on that one. And I think a lot of that is due to this awakening process, even though it's a slow move, is due to the alternative media and the alternative information based on the internet, what we've been doing, beings like ourselves, we're out there putting this information out because otherwise they're not going to hear about chemtrails. They're not going to hear about GMOs. I mean, everything is censored in mainstream media, as we both know. So this is the thing. You look at this balance, and of course it's been off balance for a very, very, very long time. And that's why when I look at these Bibles and all these belief systems, it seems to me like it's all been about conflict. There's never any resolution. It continues on and on and on. And now everybody's looking for their savior. And now everybody's looking for revelations, and they think it's revelations coming down the pike. So what do you see? And have people who attend your church mentioned revelations to you?
No, now remember, we're a Unitarian Universalist church, so we don't even get into all that kind of stuff in some ways. Now I don't preach anything from the pulpit about UFOs. I may throw in a couple of teachings or something like that, but no. But my church is. A lot of people are very open. They see me on television. They bought my book. Someone put my book in the library, the church library.
Nice.
So we'll see. What I see is this. It's Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. The future is not written in stone. We can change the future, but it's what we focus on. And it's like when when people meditate at Yankee Stadium or just these huge halls on like lowering the crime rate, and they may meditate in inner city neighborhoods or in suburbs where there's a lot of crime, and they meditate and the crime actually goes down because it's the power of the consciousness. We can cause revelations to happen if we focus on that.
I agree.
But Heisenberg's uncertainty principle says that the future predictions don't have to happen because what we do today changes what can happen tomorrow. The choices we make today can change the outcome of tomorrow. But if enough people say it's the end of the world, we're going to have World War III, and all these minds focus on World War III, it can make it come to pass. We need to focus on the world we want to live in.
Mm-hmm. I so agree with you on that one. Yeah, absolutely. And it is to some degree about mastering consciousness and, working on the highest level of consciousness possible versus fear and what ifs, the what ifs. That's huge.
Yeah. It's quantum physics. And this is what the sages of the ages have been telling us. What you focus on, you create. And quantum physics, you can focus on love and you'll create that, or you can focus on fear and you can create that. Now, you mentioned saviors. Well, listen, people think that Jesus may come back and save us from ourselves. It's a free country. You can believe that if you want. But there are also people who think that some extraterrestrials will come and save us from ourselves. That could happen. It's America. You can think what you want. But I would rather put my druthers in that we need to band together to save ourselves. We are the ones we've been waiting for. If the other folks come, that's great. But, you don't want to, because then there's no responsibility. I can make my mess and someone else will come clean it up.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. You're so right on that. Yeah, I totally believe that 100%. Yeah, we are what we're looking for. Absolutely. We just need to step up. And a lot of us have stepped up, versus a lot of people just waiting behind the scenes to see what's going to happen. And then all of a sudden they'll probably join the parade. But it's interesting. I do believe it's about empowerment and self-empowerment and taking your power back, because sometimes people have lost their power through belief systems or whatever it is that's been holding them, whether it's fear or something else.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's what you touch. It's very crucial for especially brothers and sisters like you who have radio stations. You have the airwaves. That's power, and that people be given hope, not a false hope, but people be given empowerment, because otherwise you just say, "What's the use?"
Mm-hmm.
It's a dog eat dog world. Let me get mine before somebody else gets it. And so then there's this sense of nihilism. So it's what we put out on the airwaves. It's what I put out from my pulpit. It's what I put out from when I go to these conferences, because that's shaping tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big responsibility.
Oh, it is. And it seems like you're bridging, like I said, the language of light and unconditional love on a universal level, which is really nice. And it's just, I like the work you're doing. I really have a lot of respect for what you're doing here, Michael, Reverend Michael.
I know you've been very supportive, and I thank you for that.
Well, it's not easy to come forward the way you have with your information after being an experiencer, because I'm sure a lot of people, I'm sure some will understand, but a lot of people probably still have the old school traditional behavioral pattern where it's hard for them to digest.
It really is. I mean, my parents, they're not like that. They're very understanding. My wife, I told her early on when we first met that this is what you're getting into, man. And she was there. It's just that, I feel that's my mission this lifetime. And again, living my life less fearfully, because I've had to come out. I mean, I'm on TV talking about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on the radio. People stop me in the street because people watch television. And there some people say, what are you, some kind of nut? I mean, that's part of the program. And I remember when you did a reading for me, which has been very accurate, there were some people who challenged me, and that was okay. But again, I have to speak my truth. And as long as it's not a divisive truth, then I'm going to do it. But they've helped me, and I've helped myself. Again, it wasn't a magic wand. I've had to pray and meditate and look at shadow sides, which I still do, Mm-hmm. And I got to get up and brush my teeth and go to church tomorrow. But I just do it in a different way, because it's not so much the journey, it's the people that we become on our journeys.
Right, absolutely. And with that being said, I'd like to know how you define God, or how your church, or how do they define God?
Okay. I'm going to try to make it succinct.
Okay.
Unitarian Universalism started out in the Unitarianism started out in the 1700s in England. They said that there's one God, that's, Unitarian, and that Jesus was an example, not someone to be worshipped. Universalists said, they came to these shores in the 1770s. They said that God, that no one is damned. A loving God would not damn anyone to hell. So you have one God and unconditional love. And then we branched out. We started having Wiccans. We started having, we have some Christians that probably wouldn't be called Christian in other churches, but they call themselves followers of Jesus. That's different. Jesus was a Jew. He wasn't a Christian. But people define God, which is the answer to your question, the way their heart tells them to. It's usually not some man up in the sky. A lot of people find God in nature in my congregation. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are more earth-centered in their spirituality and are not into Bibles or Qurans or Torahs, those kinds of things. I define God, because I think that was one of your questions, as the ground of being, all that is. Some people say that God is in everything. Some people say that everything is in God. It's a kind of pantheistic kind of thing. But I don't look at God as a person. I just find it as some type of intelligence. It is actually an energy. It is not anthropomorphic. I can't even put it into words. And if I could put it into words, for me, there would be something wrong, because anything that a human being says God is not, because the finite can never comprehend the infinite.
Oh, that's so well said.
From it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, I totally agree with you on that. Yeah, to me, it's a universal consciousness. Yes.
Yeah.
Totally in resonance with that, Michael. That's
Yeah, because when people start defining God, that means they act like they just talked to God on the iPhone yesterday, and then they start telling you what God said. And I'm like, if God wanted to tell me something, God wouldn't tell you to tell me. God would tell me. So that, I get very nervous when people start defining God in those terms. But the Palladians, according to Billy Meyer's teaching, they say that God, there is God, but it's a small g God. It's a God that's an extraterrestrial that's in charge of creating human beings, the races on Earth. But beyond God, there's something called creation, which is found in nature. But it's this overall universal intelligence, this universal energy. And even Jesus talked about God being a spirit, using those words, which are vague, but spirit means that it doesn't have arms and legs and eyes and nose. So that's how I define it. I know that was kind of convoluted.
No.
Hope I answered at least
You
something.
sure did. You did a fabulous job, and actually I totally resonate with that. The reason I ask is because everybody's so controlled by their version of what they think God is, and you know, not to go back into these other belief systems, but so many wars are done and bloodshed and murder in the name of their God, and I'm thinking this is so wrong.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, it is getting worse. And I mean, where do you put the brakes on these people? How do you stop them from getting so fanatical about their belief systems and the quote unquote love for their quote unquote man-made God, which is to me is man-made? Because how can a consciousness design that's advanced want this kind of conflict?
See what I do, and this is my way. I'm not saying it needs to be anybody else's way. I don't worry about what other people believe. I just try to make sure, I'm a 12-stepper, a coda. And I just try to keep my side of the street clean. I let the intelligence do what it. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't mean you shouldn't do activism or what have you. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that you do. But people are on their paths. And I'm not a big Dick Cheney fan, but Dick Cheney is a child of the universe. He's got his path, and that's what we have different paths. But I'm not stopping Dick Cheney. I'm trying to stand up for what I believe will make it a more compassionate world. But I think what happens is when you try to, there's that control issue. I can't control anybody else. I can control me.
Right. Yeah.
So barely, but I try. So I just worry about, and worry is not the right word. As long as I'm living my life in the manner that behooves me, to be a more loving, authentic, non-judgmental, integral individual. That's all that matters. That's all that's going to matter, because when I die, Dick Cheney's not going to get in the box with me. That's if I get buried, maybe I'll get cremated. I'm going by myself. That's a journey I have to make. And I'm only accountable for me. No one's going to say, well, what did you think over there with Dick Cheney? Or what did you think over there with those anti-abortion or abortion? No one's going to ask that. It's going to be about my life. And that's what it is about to me. And I think a lot of frustration brings on when we're trying to tell other people what we need to do. Be the change you want to see in the world, Gandhi tells us. Don't worry about those other folks. Jesus lived in a very violent time. Muhammad lived in a very violent time. Jesus didn't say no justice, no peace to Rome. He didn't march outside of Caesar's palace in Rome, but he just said, love ye one another. Now, that's a very difficult thing to do. He talked about the light that's in each and every one of us. That's how you change the world, by changing yourself first.
Totally. Yeah, they almost get it through osmosis too, through frequency and feeling that. I think sometimes it's empathy oriented too, that some people aren't in tune to feel that level of love or consciousness to some degree. that would
And
change
that's
them.
okay. Yeah, you're right. But I'm not responsible for them.
Right, exactly.
You're only responsible because you will attract to you what you are. Mm-hmm. You see, you will attract to you what you are. So yeah. Again, this is not saying you don't do social justice work, that one doesn't pick up the paper and read and say, I want to do something to change the world. But to change the world comes when you change yourself first. All genuine spiritual paths talk about that. The world will be okay. It really, really will if people are doing their stuff. But I can't control them.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And we're heading for a break real quick. Everybody stay tuned. We'll be right back. Ravenstar's Witching Hour. My special guest, Michael Carter.